Hi, I'm Michelle Hewitt.
And I'm Amanda Lockitch, and this is Disability with Possibility.
Dancing with the flames, even when I'm down. There's a power purring louder, charging for...
So, Michelle, who is on our show this week?
Well, today we have Sandra Pronteau, who is a very talented, very interesting lady who is a survivor of the Sixties Scoop, and I'm going to leave it for her to tell us every twist and turn that her life has taken.
And I dance. Dancing with the flames, even when I'm down. There's a power...
Hey Sandra, why don't you introduce yourself?
For sure. Hello. Dansei means hello, welcome in my language, Cree. I am a Cree-Metis, and I had also learned a couple of years ago I have some Ojibwe blood in me on my mother's side, who came from Nelson House, Manitoba. I am a visitor from the other side of the mountain upon Manitoba, and I am proud to say I am a mother of 4 grown Tsimshian children and a Kokam is grandma in Cree, to 1 grandson who is 12 years old. And I was born with my disability from the beginning of my birth. Congenital birth defect is what they diagnosed me. And a whole bunch of other terms comes with it. You know, scoliosis, hard of hearing. I have some mobility barrier challenges. As I'm now an older woman in my late 50s, I now prolong a lot of other chronic pains, health issues. I wish to say that living with my disability and being Indigenous, growing up in Winnipeg is not an easy life to endure, and especially if you've been a 60s Scoop survivor. I will say that the Métis are actually in the process of getting money compensated for the 60s Scoop survivor in Manitoba. And that just came out on a weekend, that announcement. So I'll be waiting to hear back. And it's not a lot of money, sadly to say, for all the things that we had to go through and, you know, the life I lived then and where I am today. I am very resilient. I overcome so much obstacles. I'm very glad I'm still here today. I came close to so many close call where I shouldn't be present in this life today.
So one of the things that, you know, I really wanted to talk to you about was the 60s Scoop. So my accent, you can probably see that, you know, think that I'm English, but I was actually born in the 60s in Canada, and my parents were English, only here for a couple of years, and we went back, and I didn't come back to Canada until the late 90s, and I'd never heard of the 60s Scoop. And I have to say, when I learnt about it, to say that I was embarrassed, ashamed, you know, in like of my own culture, and the fact that nobody seemed to talk about it, right? It was, you know, I thought because I'd been out of the country, I thought I was the one that didn't know, right? And then I came to understand that a lot of people didn't know. So could you, I'm so honored to talk to you, Sandra. Could you share a little bit more about what happened to you as in the 60s Scoop?
All right. Well, I think it's really important to share a little bit of the history. It's in post-era of the residential schools. So when they started shut down the residential school, the last one was in the 80s that was shut down. And prior to that, they realized that the residential school was not working as well as they wanted it to. In fact, it actually been very detrimental to the Indigenous communities all across North America and internationally, because we do have Indigenous children who are not just scooped up, taken away from their families. They were also trafficked out. And I call it human trafficking. Indigenous children were seen as a commodity. They were government property. So that's why I say commodity. We were seen as an industry where they can make money and continue to assimilate us, to acculturate us into the mainstream society. And when I say mainstream, I'm talking about like our Euro settler friends who come here, and due to the history that had impacted our folks to like want to do away with the Indian and to wipe us all out. As you know, we are all very strong warriors and we never gave up. So from my story, I will share that due to my medical health complication, I came from a very, very poor background. My mother raised 13 kids. I'm actually the 13th child. My mom had me in her late 40s. She did try to have one more after me, but lost that one. So we were living in a very remote community in northern Manitoba called Cree-Metis. And you can find some of their YouTube information if you want to learn about Cree-Metis. It is the only way you can get there is by boat, by train. Today you can go there by the wintering road, which is when it's frozen, you could drive over the lake. And I experienced that. And again, for someone like me that was taken away at a very young age, and I was hospitalized for many years, long times, for very complications I had, like scoliosis. I had like urinary tract infection. I was hard of hearing. So you could tell I was physically disabled and I had a lot of birth defects. So sadly, my mother, who was illiterate, because she grew up on the trapper's line, she was raised going around to different trapping sites. So she never, I don't think, experienced residential school or boarding school. And that's what they call it back east in Manitoba. So because of that, my father also, who I never met, sadly died when I first met my mother when I was 13 years old. And believe me, when you grow up not knowing and being fed lies, misinformation about yourself that your parents didn't want you, and it just hurts a child. Like, I remember the day I was left on the steps and my mother says, I'm going to go to the candy store and I'll be back. So I said, okay. I waited on the steps. She never came back. So imagine this little girl, 4 years old, standing at the window, crying, wondering where is her mom. And the foster family I live with, I was living in a bilingual community in Winnipeg called St. James. Were not very kind to me with their words, like feeding me words like your mom doesn't want to, she left you. Well, that kind of traumatizing for a little girl. And to believe that, and knowing I was sick a lot, I remember that. So there was a lot of things that had happened in my life growing up in various foster homes. And I grew up and I also was in a couple of group homes as well.
So Sandra, as well, if I remember rightly, as you say, you have congenital disabilities from birth, and that was because of the mercury in the water where you lived as well, and that was, I'm guessing, that would have been from mining that made it into the water.
Yes, and that's the thing that you never hear doctors talk about. And there are other things I also want to forewarn the people that are listening as well. Some of the stuff I will be talking about will be pretty heavy materials. And if it's hard for you to listen, then take a walk away for a couple of seconds or minutes. So due to the fact that where we lived, My parents lived in Thompson, Paul. We did move around a lot in Thicket Portage. And that's what I learned about my family as I first got to meet them later on in life. I was able to put two and two together because I had done some researching when I went to Native Ed in the 90s. I went and got my family community counseling certificate. And I started to learn a lot about Indigenous issues, not just from Native Ed, but through the Friendship Center of Vancouver. I sat on their board. I got culturally connected. I wanted to connect with my people. And I was living in Native housing at the time as a young mom. So that's how I decided, okay, well, obviously, doctors never really said to me till later in life, they said, well, you obviously had mercury in your system, and I'm an adult, and they told me this. So, of course, when I think back to when I visited Thompson and that surrounding area, they had nickel, mercury, and then my family had told me, my late brother actually said, we can't really hunt anymore because all of our food is contaminated. Like the fishes and the water, like my mother, when I first met my mother at the age of 13, she had to boil her water. And in the wintertime, she would use snow water. And again, you can imagine why I got sick with urinary tract infection as a little girl.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and my mother went down to the well or to the lake till she was like almost, when she had a stroke, she was in her 70s. And she would walk a distance, and she was a strong woman. She was tall. And by the way, I was born a premature baby as well. I was born really early. So I'm a petite little lady. I used to be 4'11". Now I'm only 4'9". But also remember, I also have scoliosis, which also was corrected a bit, never had surgery. But as you age, I now have a bit of the degenerative bone disease and other related bone defects that are taking place as I'm aging.
So what was it like at age 13 when you met your mother? What was that like?
Well, when I met my mom, I actually met my brother that summer at a disabled kids camp in Gimli, Manitoba, and it was called Lakeside. And I saw his luggage, and it said Pronteau, Walter Pronteau. He's passed away a few years back. And he also had a disability as well, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. He was born with that. And my dad had it as well. So it's a family genetic thing and passed down. When I learned that, I met him and connected, and I went to the social worker after the summer camp, and I said, I want to meet my mom, And I was at that age where I had answers. So when I went there, I had this vision that my mom lived in a townhouse. We're going into the paw, and I saw these nice little townhouse. And I was living with another family because I was still a minor who was taking me in while I was visiting my family. And as we're driving, they try to warn me, saying, just for you to be aware, where your mom lived is not exactly what you expect it to be. So I get there to Thicket Portage. Actually, it's not Thicket Portage. They called it the Funny Farm. And that's actually sad because that area is outside the pub, very remote, and it's called Frankerville. And it was known as a high population of alcoholics. And it's very small, little, isolated shacks living there. There's no plumbing, no electricity. And when I went there, I was just shocked. I'm like, where do I go to the bathroom? They said, well, we have a slop pail, and they're like those gallon buckets. Or in the summertime, you go to the outhouse. Where do I bath? They had this big metallic tub that people used to use for washing their clothes. Or back in the hillbilly days, they probably still use it today. I had to wash in that. And where do I do laundry? So there's a lot of things I was like, okay. And they could tell I was very much adopted and acculturated into the Euro lifestyle. So it was a real culture shock. I was sad.
And you talk about, your mother, and did you continue your relationship with her, even though it was obviously distance and, communication must have been difficult and so on? I mean, physical, no internet, right?
Yes, I actually did. It was really hard. I was full of anger and rage because when she had her stroke, she had multiple strokes, and this was in the 90s. She was, we knew she wasn't coming out after that. So I kept a journal of my life. Sadly, I was so angry. I don't know what happened to it. I think I ripped it up or burned it. And I shared all the atrocity I had experienced growing up. Physical, mental, psychological, and sexual abuse. And I was 6 years old when and I never knew what love was. I was basically taught wrong what love was. And that impacted me later in life to search for love, but in the wrong way. And that person is still alive today, living in Ottawa. And that was really hard. I was really, really angry. Like, why did you give me up? Like, why? Like, you kept everybody else. Then I learned from my brother Walter, he also was taken in care because of his arthritis was getting bad, and my mother couldn't take care of him either. And I know that one of my sisters also went to day school. They call it boarding school. So they had to go out on a train to go to another school in another community, and it's called Cranberry Portage or something like that. It's not Portage La Prairie, Cranberry Portage. And I don't know if that was a residential school or not. At the time, I had met 7 of my siblings. I got to meet some of my older sisters. I heard funny stories from my siblings. One of them, I'll share all the humor, is that apparently, because I couldn't walk, I would be crawling in the grass, meadows, right? And they said that I grabbed a tadpole and that I swallowed it. And they said that one of my siblings tried to feed it to me, and I put it in my mouth. Or mud pies, like crazy things like that. I said, gee, you guys were mean to me, right? But because I couldn't walk, so they're like, yeah. And there was a time where my older sister shared. I was so tiny that I was able to fit in the adult Sears shoebox. And they would put me inside the drawer. Because, remember, we, family of 13, I don't know how many was living, I don't know one mom. And tucked me into a drawer. And there was a time where my older sister, she passed away. She said she was looking for me. I actually wrote a poem about that, and it's going to be shared. Hopefully it will be on the upcoming production called Unsettled that will be showing at the Heart City Festival, Carnegie Community Center. So I wanted to share that. And that poem shares a bit of that story about how my sister came back from boarding school and she was looking for me because she took care of me and she couldn't find me. And then, so the poem is really amazing. I don't want to give too much into that because I don't want to spoil the whole detail of that.
I can see Amanda making notes, so I'm sure that she will make that known to everybody, and she will certainly make sure that, I won't be able to be there, because I don't live close, but that I make sure that I look out for that poem afterwards. You talk about your anger and obviously, like, oh my goodness, I don't know. I don't know how you ever came out the other side of that, but I know that you have, right? I know that you're this hugely resilient, caring woman. Like, for example, I saw on Instagram that you were doing a workshop with some disabled people and they wanted to bead. And so you'd come up with this beautiful little project. And I think it was a red dress, or it was on my phone. I don't know about the colours. Or it could have been for Orange Shirt Day, but it was, you'd made this beautiful little project that you could do with people. And I just thought the amount of caring in that, to think through that, what we need as disabled people, but to still share your culture in such a way. So what's that journey been like, to come from anger to the Sandra that we know now, that is this massive advocate and, works with people in so many positive ways?
Well, for me, I knew I need to find a balance in my life. And like I said, when I was at Native Bed for 3 years, that was the beginning of my healing journey. Because I did my family genealogy tree, which really helped me understand my family roots, and then learning the history. And then the cultural part was so important, because when my mother had passed away, I came across her beading box. She had box full of beads and that in it. And she used to make moccasins, flaps, which is like the inside of the tongue. And she would do it for free. Sometimes she would ask for $2. $2 back in her time was a lot of money. And she had a big heart. And so I wanted to learn to bead. I started making dream catchers first. And even that was hard because I got a little impatient. And over time, I started to practice. Beading became something important. And to me, I started doing earrings, dream catcher earrings, and other little products. And I think Amanda had seen some of my work when we were at the conference not that long ago. And then when the Kamloops Residential School announcement came out about the children, I knew about this way before that, because elders I had met from the Friendship Center, from the Indigenous communities, like amazing, respectable elders who are not here today, shared their stories with us. And I was just so deeply impacted. And I got into making a whole bunch of orange shirt beaded pins. And I donated for every pin I made, $10 went to the Residential School Survivors Society. And I wanted to contribute to that. And I also want to let you know that I'm also faith-based too. So that was the other thing. For me to find a balance was not just having my Indigenous traditional culture, but also because I had always been faith-based. And that's what kept me going. My children are Tsimshian, West Coast, and I learned about their culture because I also own a chilkat blanket that I made, which is another word for the button blanket that you see the dancers wear for ceremonies or potlatches. So that's been like something I've been very honored and proud. Although I am Métis, am connected with a Métis women's organization as well. So I'm putting myself out there, and as we get older, it's really important for us to know our roots, our traditional way. Even though our ancestors are not here, I know they're with me inside when I'm beading. Every bead I put on, like that orange shirt pin I made, every bead I would put it on was like a prayer for that child, for the family. And that's a lot of children. That's a lot deceased. Some have not been found yet.
Yeah, I find it, before I was disabled, my career was in education. And, the fact that these things that happen to you and so many, and as you say, all of these lost children that we have, that all happened in the name of education, is just, education is a weapon for good. It's not a weapon for evil. And I just, I just find, and that thought, as you say, every bead that you put in, and you think of that, how it fits into your heritage and to those children. And yeah, I mean, and I just hope that we come to terms with, our part in all of this and what we did. And
I was also just wondering if there's any way that people are able to find your work to support you, to support the, where you go on to support. Do you have a way for people to access the work that you do, any beading or artwork?
Well, personally, I don't like to put it out on social media much because we do get a lot of people that are practicing appropriation and or stealing your work, which is sad. Like, I had a situation where we had a friend of mine from the downtown east side. I will not say what race she is, but she's not Indigenous. And then I explained to her that it's not acceptable because you're not Indigenous. It's great that you wanted to learn to make it, but when you're selling it, that's not okay. And so I'm very cautious. I will once in a while show my work on Facebook. Not all the time. Once in a while I'll put it on Instagram. I'm very cautious. I mostly do it to one-on-one messenger.
Word of mouth.
People, yeah, to people I know that are trustworthy and that are, you got to be careful about exploiting your work. And some people are great about it.
Just so people know, on Instagram, I think I saw you're at Sandra Pronteau.
Yeah.
And there are beautiful pictures of your dogs. I used to have Bernese Mountain Dogs. And as you say, I have Leo, my service dog, who's a rescue from Texas. And I have to say, I just, oh my goodness. I know this is a podcast, but there's, they're huskies. They're a type of husky or
Pomsky. He's
Pomsky.
He's part husky and Pomeranian, and this breed only came in existence since 2019. And I will share something funny, and everybody asked me, husky and Pomeranian? How do they do it? And I'm well, don't visualize it that way. Science. They use science.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's not done that way. It's not, that really doesn't work. Yeah, no. Oh my goodness, but they are adorable.
He's my emotional support dog, and I actually want to get him a permit so I could take him on a transit. I want to take him to Central Park because I don't drive, and I really want him to explore other areas with me.
Well, you and I should talk about that away from the podcast, because I trained my boy Leo as my service dog to pass the BC exam, and so I got a lot of information there that we can share. I could talk to you for hours about all kinds of things, Sandra. I really could.
That'd be wonderful.
I'm just as I say, Amanda can tell you I've been buzzing, waiting for this day, waiting for when. And and she kept saying, we're talking to this person. I'd be like, when are we talking to Sandra?
We finally got it on
Not that
the
I don't
books.
love everybody else we've talked to, don't get me wrong, but yeah.
There are just there are two quick things that I wanted to bring up. One was that you're part of the DWP Disability Without Poverty Action Group. You've been integral to our Shape the CDB in terms of survey and interview, and really continuing to be involved with that work. So, which we are deeply grateful and thank you for. And you also earned the Hummingbird Award from Dawn Canada last year. So do you want to just
please tell
sort
us.
of, promote a little bit more of the amazing advocacy work that you do?
Well, it's kind of funny how it all came down to, as you know, I was a former support worker in the downtown east side, and I was working rotation shifts. So that's like 12 hours, 2 days and 2 overnights. And I did that for almost 9 years. And I'd say you could probably read some of my stories under the UGM. That's who I was employed with the Women and Family Department or program. And it was the stabilization program for women and moms and babies that were wanting to exit out of addiction, wanting to find a purpose and a healthy life. So because I was also experiencing with new management, I'm not saying, I had a lot of good workers, good friends I made over the years. But when the new people came in, there was a handful of them who were not very receptive to seeing someone like me on the team. And I started to experience gaslit. I started to experience ableism. And it affected my mental health. And it was really hard. So I quietly walked away, and it was the hardest thing ever. And I was actually dealing with a lot of chronic pain. And a person like me who had endured so much pain in life, you learn, I've been through worse. That kind of mentality. It was when I left that I realized my body was not able to do what I can do today or then, and had to come to full acceptance and understand I cannot work that many hours anymore. My body, my mental health, all that was in jeopardy. So I was depressed for about 3 months. I was not just only sick, but I was laying around on my couch. And I even actually approached the organization before I left about having a disability advocate on their organization. I was willing to take training. They had money and all that. Nothing. They just kind of like, kind of thing, and just left it at that. So it's okay. But when I realized, in Winnipeg, I had a lot of friends, and I was connected to the disability organization. And some of the names we had back then, I'll give you one example. The Crippled Children's Society of Manitoba was a name we had. Yes, exactly. And back in those days, you probably know, we were all segregated in the all handicapped school, 60s to the late 70s. Then we were put in mainstream. So I want to share a little bit of that history, why I am where I am today. So when I realized I got connected with Evelyn from Dawn Canada, I'm also with another group called Aboriginal Women Action Network, also known as A1, and they're a grassroots feminist political group fighting abolishing prostitution, gender-based violence, wanting to now bring forth land-based knowledge. A lot of good work has been done with them. And that is another piece of me is I am kind of radical but I'm also like at an age where I'm not as radical I used to be. I'm more like passive aggressive kind of girl. But I will speak my mind, like if I have a very strong passion and I am going to address it. And so disability came up after I connected with Evelyn. She asked me if I'd be interested with Dawn Canada. I said, sure. And then I got connected with Inclusion BC through Curricle. That's how I found them, went through Curricle. And then Inclusion BC. And so I really got plugged out there. And I really wanted to help the folks. Although I may not fit all of the criteria, but I do have developmental disability. It may not be cognitive, but it's physical. And I'm grateful for that because as you know, I had some paralysis because of nerve damage due to years of abuse and probably birth defect as well. Anyway, so I just was so happy when I got involved because that's been my biggest passion. And I also wanted to dedicate my time for the younger generation and the future generation to come after me, to be educated, to learn, and stand up for themselves and say, no, I am not a piece of object. I'm not something you can just mistreat and not treat us like humans. And what I love is the people I met from all walks of life have some amazing stories, and I support them. I'm also a part of the Simon Fraser Community Living BC, even though I have never been a client, but I have lived experience as a young mom, raising my 4 kids, because I had to have homemaker service to help me, to give me a little bit of respite time for me to go out shopping, do a little bit of self-care for myself. Because raising 4 kids was hard, especially when you have a disability. And even that, like, people are very ableism about that. It's like, what? You have 4 children? How did you do that? It's like, well, how do you think we have children? Right? And as well, in my case, I said I had them all by C-section because of my scoliosis and my pelvic, right? So, and actually, we'll share one last piece that's very important about this. When I was pregnant with my first child in Winnipeg, they actually were trying to talk me into terminating the pregnancy and to get sterilized. And when the doctor, that's when I realized, no, this is my body. I'm going to go through the pregnancy. If I can't carry full term, then I know I will try. And here you go.
4 children later, it's time for you to go back and tell those people exactly, right, where they can shove their views. Sandra, how you have negotiated your disability, right? Because, those of us who are disabled, I also have chronic pain and, a number of the other things. Yeah, those take time of our day. But how you've negotiated the ableism alongside the massive racism, right? The sort of racism right from, as you say, from before your birth, right? Before you were born and just ingrained into everything, to come through as somebody that, is such a strong advocate for your community, and any young person that meets you, anybody that meets Sandra in Vancouver, I strongly suggest you listen to this very wise woman's words as she guides you through. And I often wonder. I became disabled, but I don't know how I would have ever had the resilience that you have. And I'm just so honored to meet you, Sandra, and so honored to be part of this conversation.
Yeah, it does just speak to resiliency, and that is a common thread that has been weaving through our very different podcasts, and just the huge amount of resiliency that is helping people keep going and turning them into advocates for other people. It's just
Yeah.
quite a beautiful thing.
I also want to answer that one case for you, Amanda. The Hummingbird Award was given to, it was founded by a beautiful African woman who's sadly gone. I have her name, but I can't say it right now. And Bonnie from Don Canada, the CEO, shared this beautiful story about the hummingbird. And you can find it on YouTube. So it's basically about a hummingbird who keeps trying to put this fire out. And you know how tiny those little birds are, right? And they're like continuously going back and forth trying to put the fire out. It's like a little fairy tale story, but there's truth to it. All the animals are saying you cannot put that fire out alone. And the hummingbird's like, well, at least I'm trying. That's what it's about. It's all about putting the time and effort and trying your best, your darnest, in spite of what obstacle gets in your way, whatever wall comes up, you're going to get over that wall. You're going to make it happen. And that's what that hummingbird, I had no idea I was getting. I was like ecstatic. I was like lightheaded. I thought I was going to faint. Yeah, it just kind of blew my mind away. It's like, wow. I don't know if anyone else knew beforehand, but yeah, I thought we were doing a family, well, not a family, like a group photo of Don Canada members. Only to tell me, well, here's Sandra Pronteau. Will you please come up? And I'm like, what? Yeah. So that's the story of the Hummingbird Award. And you can learn more about it on YouTube. Yeah.
I think that sums you up, and like that little bird going back to fight the fires over and over again. I think that's a very apt thing for you, Sandra.
Yeah, and should I ask my silly question?
You ask whatever you want.
I always ask silly questions.
Well,
which is,
go for it.
if we were sitting down to a meal together, what would be your choice of what we're eating?
The mood I'm in right now, I would always go for, and it's bad for my gut, but I only have it once a year. I love chicken enchiladas.
Oh yeah.
And then I'm good for a year. It's like, okay, I'm not eating more of that.
Oh,
you get it? You're like, oh, shouldn't have done that, but it was delicious. Let's wait another year.
Oh, I'm right
Yes,
there with you.
I do love Mexican. Yes.
Oh.
But I love all you can eat. I love food. I'm a foodie person.
I'm a foodie person.
Yeah, and I'm a pho person too. Yeah, pho. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good worm soup.
Yeah. Well, Amanda, as you know, I was waiting for us to record this episode for a long time because Sandra is so articulate, has had a life full of challenges, and certainly talking to her did not disappoint in any way.
She's such a fierce advocate to help people who are following in her footsteps.
Given that the path that her life took was already marked out before she was born, with the the poisoning of mercury in the water, and she comes back from all of that to deliver so many possibilities for us and so many life lessons. I'm so grateful to her for everything that she's done and for making the time to talk to us.
I'm very excited to see her again in person. I know this will have aired by then, but at next month's Indigenous Wellness Gathering in Victoria.
So, What do we have coming up next week, Amanda?
Next week, we have one of the best conversationalists. I have very, very long conversations with Marie LeBlanc, who is a multimedia artist and is in a position now that she is living out of her van because her multiple chemical sensitivities and other things have prohibited her from living in any kind of structured building that she doesn't have control over.
Well, looking forward to that conversation too.
If you would like to make comments or suggestions,
but only nice ones, of course,
please reach out to us at hello@disabilitywithoutpoverty.ca. If you want to talk to either Michelle or Amanda specifically, it's just our individual names, Amanda@disabilitywithoutpoverty.ca or Michelle@disabilitywithoutpoverty.ca.
And to find more about what this whole Disability Without Poverty shebang is about, our website is disabilitywithoutpoverty.ca.
And I dance, I dance, I dance, dancing with the flames.
Disability with Possibility is made possible by many, many people. However, a few key people that we would like to thank are Christina Sheldon for her fabulous theme song, producer Dave Shumka with Kelly and Kelly, and all the funders and partners who help us do what we do.